We'd like to welcome you to With You podcast.
Where we explore relationships and life transitions.
I'm David.
And I'm Tara.
I thought I'd try it different so people know we read it or say it each time.
Yeah, it's not recorded.
I saw your eyes like, what are you doing?
Just one little word different.
Yeah, and it changes the whole thing. How are you feeling today?
Oh, man. I'm all right.
Oh, I thought you were going to say I'm tired.
Yeah. Well, we could always say we're tired. We are talking about sleep today.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was perfect to say,
you were setting me up.
Tired. I was setting it up.
I know, but it gets really old, doesn't it? We're all tired. Everybody says they're tired.
Everybody's tired. Tired
Which is why this is a good topic of discussion, because I think everybody is not getting enough sleep. Everybody feels like they're chasing sleep.
Yeah. And I think as we get older, it's different. I know you and we had wonderful family time, and then we crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like emotional tired, physical tired.
It's a good kind of tired.
It is a good kind of tired, but there's that fatigue, and we need sleep to recover, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I've never been like big fan of sleep.
You've never been a fan of sleep? I think you are. You're one of those people who can magically sleep anywhere.
Anytime.
At the drop of a hat.
I know. I think it's what helps me with jet lag is that I get into a plane and I can just will myself to sleep for the amount of time I need to.
You can sleep on a plane. I feel like that Dr. Seuss book. You can sleep on a plane, on a train, in a car, very far.
That's right. During a lecture. That would be interesting. I wonder what would come out if I was just sleep talking.
Oh, no. Probably that wouldn't be recommended.
Yeah, probably that would be a bad thing. Well, we're going to talk about sleep today because we have some interesting facts, and it feels like you spend so much of your life sleeping that it should be something.
And yet not enough.
And not enough. And how are we going to make it relational?
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, we can do that. It feels like it's something that's one of those things that's so ordinary. It's something that we do every day, and yet it's complicated.
Yeah. Have you ever really thought about sleep? I mean, when I prevent myself from sleeping, that's what I usually think about is like, what happens when we sleep? Like, where do I go? And I must still be in my body.
I know, it's kind of weird.
But it is. And it's really kind of creepy as I look over, like if you fall asleep and I'm not sleeping, it's like, where's Tara at?
Yeah.
That it feels a bit distant. And
I know. Sometimes I think, why did God create us this way where we have to shut everything down for a good period of the day?
Yeah.
We could have just been created as, beings who just could keep going. I know at times in my life, probably in college and other times when I've had a lot to do, you just feel like I'm wasting so much time by shutting my eyes for a few hours. I could be so much more efficient if I could just keep working. Why do I need to shut everything down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know the details of like, we need it for cognition. We need it for memory. It's a necessary part. But like today, walking with someone for coffee, we were talking about just the amount of work that needs to happen. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, it looks like I'm going to give up sleeping for the next couple of days to get everything done. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I knew what we were going to talk about. And I'm like, so can you do that? She goes, for a short term, I can just kind of burn through, and I have deadlines, but it's not a rhythm that you should.
No. And maybe we should talk about that first, because I think that has been normalized by some people. And I remember hearing Martha Stewart once say that she lives on 4 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I've heard that somewhere else too. And I found there's quite a few highly successful, people who really push themselves and feel like they need to accomplish a lot in a day, who kind of say, or even say that other people should live this way too, like on 3 to 5 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah.
And then you wonder, is that a certain kind of human? Like, which came first? Are they somebody who doesn't need to sleep, so they have all this time, so they're really successful and driven, and or are they so driven to accomplish things that they just turn off sleep because they just can't imagine losing that number of hours in a day? And I don't know which it is, but I did look up some of those people. Dolly Parton is one of them, Martha Stewart. I think Bill Gates used to say that he slept on just a few hours a night, but he said it was like he and his colleagues used to kind of, talk amongst themselves about who could get up by on the least amount of
It was
sleep.
a competition.
Yeah, it was kind of, well, and people who do that too,
Yeah.
who kind of, it's a status symbol almost to be so busy that you don't have time for sleep.
Yeah.
But he discovered, well, and this will go kind of into some of the detriments of living on that amount of sleep, that when his dad died of Alzheimer's, he found the studies that said you're much more likely to have dementia and all sorts of other health issues
Uh-oh.
if you live on such a little amount of sleep.
Yeah.
So he changed his tune.
Well, there's some like scientists too, like who did the light bulb? Edison. Oh, I should probably get more sleep.
Bing.
Edison was doing that as well. Of like, but his was different rhythm. It wasn't like a total of only 3 hours, but it was like an hour nap here and then do some work, and then so the rhythm wasn't like I take out 8 hours or I take out 6 hours. It was there was productive and then downtime and productive and downtime. And I haven't seen many studies about that. I know
Like if you get the right number of hours, but you just break it up into smaller chunks.
yeah, should it be consecutive or and there is a rhythm to it in terms of getting REM sleep. And is it REM or is that the band in Athens, Georgia? I think both are
both.
true. Yeah,
Both are true. Yeah. So there are obviously a lot of health benefits to getting a good amount of sleep because our bodies are designed for downtime.
Yeah.
And even though people who are driven and those of us who are in busy seasons feel like it's a waste of time, there's a lot happening when we sleep, right?
There is, and we should probably get into that. And I know you're a better duration sleeper than I am. I can sleep anywhere, but like if there's things going on, deadlines, lots of pressures, then I get up early. I just can't continue to sleep.
Yeah.
It's not a choice, but it's just kind of like I'm up and you're like, what are you thinking about? Because now we know.
Yeah.
Like if I get up early, you're like,
I know you have a lot on your mind, but I don't think you used to be that way.
no,
when we
I've
were
grown
younger.
into not sleeping.
Yeah.
when we were younger. Yeah, before
Yeah.
grad school, I loved to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was never a sleeper inner. Is that a word?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I liked signing up for early classes in college. I like when on the weekends, I don't sleep in
Yeah.
till noon. I wouldn't say I'm a huge early riser, like not 5
No, but in
o'clock
college,
in the morning.
you made me get up.
I feel more productive in the morning.
Yeah.
But then the problem was when we got married and you were a night owl, I tried to do both. And that's not easy to do.
No.
You can't stay up late and get up and feel fresh in the morning.
But I think we learned to do that when we had adolescence. I mean, the rhythms of family life affect sleep. I think newborns, college,
Yeah.
teenagers.
Yeah. Newborns, you get to test that theory of like having small chunks of sleep and do they add up? Is it still efficient and useful?
Where did it come? Like I sleep like a baby, because I always thought that meant you just slept really well. But now that we've had our children, we have a granddaughter, like sleeping like a baby is up every few hours.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple ways to look at it because people say that meaning you sleep deeply, you're not bothered by noise around you.
Yeah.
But we know, usually we think of sleeping like a baby, like, you're, like you said, you sleep in short intervals and you're up and crying every 2 hours, which isn't a good way.
That shouldn't be how you sleep.
But
as a
remember
baby.
that one time we were in a hotel with our son.
Yeah.
We had just one child and he was sleeping in a portable crib
Yeah.
and the fire alarm went off in the hotel and there was a I don't know, what is it? An alarm.
Yeah, right
thing,
above our
right above
bed.
our bed, making the most awful racket. You woke up straight into standing and clawing at the walls to
I thought that
turn
was
off the noise.
pretty amazing physical feat, going from being prone to standing up and ripping the fire alarm off the wall
and
in the
it shows
hotel.
how loud it was, and yet our son slept through it.
I know, we thought he had hearing damage.
He was fine.
He was out. He didn't move at all. I don't
So,
understand.
I think that's what they mean.
By sleeping like a baby. Yeah, we thought he was broken. Are you okay?
He's fine. His hearing's good.
Yeah, and you never wake a sleeping baby.
No.
Like because of that. So why is sleep important? Like we've done a little bit of the research on that. And I think there's probably 5 or 6 reasons
There's
why.
probably even more than that, but we'll kind of just lay out a few of them. I mean,
What's your favorite?
what's my favorite?
Yeah, favorite
I
reason.
don't have a favorite reason, but it is true that and I have read that when you're sleeping is when there's your memories are consolidated
Yeah.
or organized or imprinted or whatever word you
Yeah.
want to use, which actually makes a lot of sense because I really did live on not enough sleep when I was in college, and I don't have a lot of memories of college. I don't think I ever got to that stage where those memories were being stored in their files or whatever happens when you're
Yeah.
sleeping.
Memories are an interesting thing too, because we encode them in the way that we initially experience them. And yes, rest helps us do that with the different wavelengths that are going on in the brain. But then when we remember it again, it's encoding it in a whole new way. So we recall it, but then now we're remembering it as we are now. So if there's something that happened in college and we haven't thought about it until now, and we remember it and encode it, it's a different memory.
Yeah, that's kind of mind blowing, but that's a whole other subject.
We'll talk about memory another time, unless we forget.
I see what you did.
See what I did there. I like the idea of rest and repair, and we've used this metaphor like we need downtime, or computers need to reboot, or there is this kind of in nature and in technology of there has to be shutting things down to reset. And I think that's the case for us. And I think both the memory encoding and the resetting, the reasons that we have that, I think that goes to then dreams too, because people are like, what are dreams? And in my field, people get all sorts of wacky about what do dreams mean. But I think it's really in the sleep space. It's about memory encoding,
processing,
and processing everything and reorganizing it, of giving the body repair, because we have that naturally in physical exercise. If you're working out, there needs to be a recovery period for the body to repair and to strengthen. And I think about that mentally.
Yeah. And that's what we, as busy humans in this, this time of existence where people want efficiency, maybe it's our culture, whatever it is, where we don't put a lot of value on restoration, repair, and just rest in general. We see most of our value in being able to keep going and keep doing and, maximizing our time. So we tend to downplay the need for that. But I do like that there's repair happening overnight while we're sleeping.
Strengthens. I probably need more sleep, more repair because I think that's why, like, when there's a lot of activity going on for me, I can't fully shut down. There's part of my brain, even in sleep, that's like holding on, trying to process things. And there's not that recovery. Has there been a time recently, I know the answer to this, but has there been a time recently where you wake up just as tired as you go to bed?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, and that may be a function of the time of life I'm in. But I'm thinking,
so what does that mean?
I had brain fog.
Oh yeah.
All of that stuff.
Yep.
But I'm thinking a lot more of when I pull all-nighters supporting birth, and I miss, a full night of sleep, and sometimes going into another night, the way that feels, where I know I'm malfunctioning. I'm not working well. That time comes when I'm up and I'm working at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I've been working for 12 hours or 18 hours before that. I can feel my brain get sluggish and my words get slurred. It's weird. It's like seeing somebody impaired. And, because your brain needs to shut down. It's a weird feeling because you can't control yourself as well. Then I worry about driving home safely. You are impaired.
Yeah. And then you get home and then you push through, and then we mess with you because it is so much fun when you're cognitively impaired from lack of sleep. We're not super nice that way.
No,
but
that doesn't sound good, but it is
it's
kind of
playful because you get talkative in a different way. It really, you can see it affects your executive functioning, like things that you hold close.
Yeah.
When you're super sleep deprived, you'll say just about anything and me and the kids just enjoy that so much.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. There's some part of the brain that just goes offline or something.
Yeah,
There's like the
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 prefrontal cortex.
inhibitions, yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it shuts down. And I remember when we were driving in Australia back in 2006, somewhere around there, we saw billboards that said, "Be careful of microsleep." Remember
Mm-hmm.
microsleep? And I think it's this, that there's moments where if we're really fatigued, our brains just go offline. We're not exactly sleeping, but there's like
Oh,
long
you
blinks.
can actually sleep. Like that does happen when I've been up that long. And sometimes, I'm talking to somebody and I feel my eyes, the weight of my eyelids is so heavy, and you find yourself actually losing consciousness, like sleeping. And that was a whole campaign in Australia to reduce accidents from
Yeah.
truckers that have been driving too long. I think saying like the road can just look the same and you just take this micro sleep, and in that amount of time you can be
Yeah.
off the road.
I'm going to take this long blink.
Yeah. And that's what
Mm.
it feels like. I'm just going to close my eye just for a second. I'm just going to blink, and then who knows how much time goes by.
Yeah. Well, and I remember that. This seems like we're confessing to really impaired driving, but when we had young kids, new kids,
New kids. Yeah.
yeah, new
Yeah.
kids, it was Ryan, and I was driving into the city for supervision. I remember getting honked at. It was like winter, and I was on Ogden Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
and there was fire pits there, and I was at a stoplight, and all of a sudden I hear honking, and I'm pretty sure I slept at the stoplight.
Whoops.
Unfortunately, had my foot on the
Well, thank
brake.
goodness your commute moved to the train, and then you would just sleep through your stop,
Well,
and
yeah, that's
you
so much safer.
so much better.
And now I walk to school,
Yeah.
and so
So that would be strange if you slept on your commute now.
well, yes, people sleepwalk. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, we didn't do any research on that, but I used to sleepwalk when I was young.
Did you really?
Yeah, I think it was when we were in times of big transition because we moved a lot,
Hmm.
and I would just be confused about where, I think I'd probably be thinking about a lot, and I'd wake up and, well, I wouldn't wake up. My parents would find me walking around the house and I'd have no memory of it in the
Yeah.
morning.
Well,
Anyway,
and you can see how that, like the restoration and repair, you can kind of wake up and cognitively still be in that repair cycle. I
mhm.
think when we travel, sometimes we forget what hotel or what Airbnb, and you're like, where are things and
Yeah,
where
you
am
have to
I?
consciously sort of pull your brain online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's necessary to restore. It's necessary for memory consolidation.
Yeah, and so we've already mentioned sort of the cognitive performance
Yeah.
thing, but the more restorative sleep we get, the better our cognitive performance is the following day.
Yeah.
And just in general, I think you kind of, if you build up a sleep deficit, I think your brain just isn't functioning fully 100%.
I really like the term sluggish. I think that's it. It's not firing as fast. It's hard to attend. All of
Hmm.
those really front of the brain, top of the brain things slow down. And you can see how that's dangerous to work. There's really good research on how sleep impaired functioning, cognitive
Hmm.
functioning, is worse than alcohol impaired
Yeah.
functioning.
Yeah.
That it's more dangerous. It's the same kind of thing, that it has the impact on the brain
Hmm.
in that space, which you don't think about. You're like, well, of course, I'm not going to drink and drive, but
But
we'll
driving
drive
tired can be
tired.
worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just being able to focus and make decisions quickly is hard when you're sleep deprived. Same as brain development for a younger person.
Yeah.
I think what is really underemphasized is that growing children, teenagers, need a lot more sleep than they're getting.
9 to 11 hours of sleep.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
we talked with our kids about that, trying to use the literature to get them to sleep. But think about a teenager's life, how it's set up, right? It's set up. Ours had to get up at 6, maybe a little bit before, to
mhm.
then catch the bus or drive to school. And biological rhythm, they're probably useless until 10
Right.
a.m.
Yeah, they would come alive after 10, and they're not really, their circadian rhythms shift, right, in
Yeah.
their teenage years, and they're not even able to fall asleep before midnight often. And then we're
Right.
getting them up before the sun comes up to go to school.
Yeah. And if you think about, you work backwards, if they have to be up at 6, 9 hours is going to bed at 9 p.m. How many teenagers go to bed at
Oh,
9
their
p.m.?
events start after that.
Right? Like baseball practice in college was at 10 p.m. in the
Yeah.
gym. And so
Yeah.
there's this weird setup that we have in terms of training our bodies and the developing body to work without the right amount of sleep, and it affects cognitive functioning. It affects growth.
Yeah. And we talked about thinking, but also emotional regulation is greatly affected by our amount of sleep. And I think we have alluded to that a lot in just talking about before having an important conversation, or if you're in an argument, realizing we've got to meet the basic needs first so
Yeah.
that we're in a good place to be regulated and think straight. And sleep is one of those really basic needs.
It really is. And when you think about like the anxious, there's been some books and discussion about this being a more anxious generation. I do think the lack of sleep discipline and commitment contributes. I don't think it's causal, but I think it contributes to the emotional reactivity, the emotional fear. We're just not firing right
Yeah.
because we're not rested.
Yeah. So hopefully that would be something that's fairly fixable.
Yeah.
Getting back to getting a good amount of sleep. And there's lots of studies on sleep. Like we will link to a few because I think some people might want to go deeper into it. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think most of the literature says adults, like fully grown adults, need from 7 to 9 hours, to be optimal.
I don't like that. I know that's the literature.
Yeah.
And it is true, but this is convicting because I don't get that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a problem.
It's hard.
It is hard. It's a commitment to restructuring our lives.
Well, and that's why we talk about the benefits of it, because I think we all know that. We know that 8 hours is optimal generally in that range.
Yep.
And yet, like, it's easy to just get by on whatever our rhythms have become and just be normalized being tired all the time, and get used to living with a bit of brain fog and whatever. But I think it's amazing what could change, even just health wise, being able to lose weight, like our body's working at optimum functioning
Yeah.
if we got the right amount of sleep.
Well, and I think for us in terms of our faith, there's a rhythm of rest built into Christianity of having the Sabbath, and it's on a week kind of idea. But there's the pattern of there needs to be downtime, there needs to be rest. It's built into who we are.
Right. And that's answering the question I was just asking before too about, I used to wonder, why did God even make us this way where we have to stop? And I
Yeah.
think that's the reason why, because he made our body so that we have no choice, because rest is good for us.
Yeah.
And we could say, sure, I know it's good for me, but I'm going to continue doing these things unless our body just absolutely stopped. Like
Yeah.
it does. It just, sleep deprivation is actually a torture device. Like
Yeah.
it's just,
It is.
Yeah.
And casinos, right? Casinos remove
Oh, no.
clocks. Well, it's that idea. I don't want you to have a sense of time.
Yeah.
And it dysregulates you, where you remove a sense of time, whether it's, you were saying torture, I was saying casino.
Same.
But it has an impact on you. So what other kind of facts do you have about how much sleep?
Well, I mean, we know
need.
that it changes with our developmental stage, that newborns sleep a lot. They need for their first 3 months, I think they need somewhere around between 14 and 17 hours of sleep. And I don't know if we ever counted the number of hours of sleep. You just know that they sleep, they wake up and they eat and they go back to sleep. There's just
And
a
there's
lot
some
of,
kind of excrement that happens in between there.
yeah, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And
And then as they get a little older, they can sleep 12 hours a night if you're lucky, but they do need, and they take naps. So they need a cumulative, 12 to 14 would be great for a toddler, I think.
Yeah.
And then it's a little less than that for school age children. And then for teenagers, they still really are needing 10 hours of sleep, which I just don't even know any teenager that gets anywhere
Yeah.
near that.
I don't. I think one of our sons is early. His work starts really, really early. He's been pretty disciplined to getting close to 9 hours of sleep.
He's really good at that discipline of just having his set bedtime and
Yeah.
doing it.
And I think part of that, I'm going to say we get credit for part of that because we were structured around
we
sleep with
we
our
were.
kids, and it's because we're kind of structured anyway. And I guess I want to talk about this as we talk about parenting and
Yeah.
sleeping and kids, is it's finding a good fit for your rhythm as well as the kids, but understanding what the sleep requirement is, then how
Yeah.
do you build that into your rhythms? And for us it was pretty structured.
Well, I know for a lot of families, bedtime is a huge battle. And sleep for the parents is a huge, thing they're chasing and desperately wanting, and they have trouble getting kids to sleep. And we'll have some ideas, maybe specific ideas on
Yeah.
helping that happen better, because I think that is something that for all four of our kids, we didn't really struggle with sleep. I think our routine, which I sort of got from my upbringing, and I think your
Hmm.
parents were pretty structured
Yeah.
with sleep too.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our family template. It worked pretty well for us, getting them in a pattern of bedtime was a happy time and they didn't fight going to bed for the most
Hmm.
part. And we had some routines in place that helped support it. And so we got as much sleep as you get in those years,
Yeah.
Um, so
Well,
yeah,
and it was a relational, I mean, it was a ritual decision in terms of we were going to form patterns around that. But it was also a relational decision. If we didn't do that, we weren't going to have any time together.
no,
Like we had the goodness of it of for us to even have any relationship, we
yeah,
needed to structure it that way.
yeah. It was totally for survival and,
Yeah.
and totally about ourselves
Yeah.
having some time together. And because the kids were little when you were in grad school. So I think early on I was burdened all day with the kids and you were still studying into the night. So it was me needing like a break.
Yep.
And then you did the early morning shift, which probably started your habit of getting up earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, and we did different rhythms. We were really before grad school, we were really pretty structured, and then in grad school, we deviated from that structure. Like I would come home late at night, and then the kids would be in bed for a little bit. They'd get up and play with me, and we built in even some rhythm there. That was a little disrupted, but it fit for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you want to talk about what we did? We can talk about all the detriments of not getting enough sleep,
Yeah,
but I
so
think
I think
everybody
everybody
knows.
gets the idea of how much sleep. There's this kind of people
Like,
people
yeah, we
know.
need optimal sleep, and there's a lot of health challenges and detriments if we build up a sleep deficit. If we don't get enough sleep, there's a lot more chance for just physical health problems,
Yeah,
for
diabetes, high blood pressure,
and
all the
even I just
circulatory
read,
system.
yeah, dementia. What else? Oh, this was interesting too. I read one study that said short sleep duration might be a factor that contributes to racial and ethnic health disparities, because it's well documented apparently that Black people in America get less sleep. And
Hmm.
I don't know what the reason for that is, but then it leads to a lot of kind
Health
of health
disparities.
disparities and just different health trajectories.
Yeah, I think that was a kind of from what we did. That was the University of Utah did a pretty in-depth their neuro department did that study.
Yeah, but it's also a lack of sleep is also related to obesity, hypertension, diabetes, stroke, neurodegenerative disorders, depression, bad stress management. Like it's pretty
Well,
clear
and
that we
and
need to be sleeping more.
all of this is interconnected, right? It's not necessarily causal, but
Right.
there's this component of if we're doing relationship well, if we're sleeping well, if we're eating well, exercising, finding those rhythms, there's positive outcomes.
Hmm.
And it's a complex trajectory, but
Yeah.
it's pretty evident if we're not doing it, it puts us at greater risk
Right.
for a cascade effect.
I think that's a better way to say it, because we're not saying it's causal. Like if you get 5 hours of sleep, you're definitely going to get diabetes.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like we want to keep our bodies in optimal working order and keep our what's our system that fights off diseases?
The autoimmune
Yes,
system.
thank
Yeah.
you. I don't know why that word slipped my mind.
Well,
Our immune system.
you've been up for a while.
I know. Yeah.
This is
So
a good example of
I know.
like, I know
I
that
got a
word.
word. It's right there. But yes, our immune system is optimized when we're doing all those things right.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever going to have that all together perfectly. But if we can tweak some of those small things,
Yep.
we can mitigate some of that risk.
Well, let's talk about mitigating risk and kind of what people are doing to get more sleep and
I
better
know.
sleep.
Well,
And
the whole thing that kind of kicked this off was I saw a study about how many couples in America are sleeping in separate bedrooms. They're calling it the sleep divorce.
huh.
So that kind of kicked it off, and we'll get there
So
to
like 7 people, is that the stats? Oh, we're not going there yet. I was gonna,
with numbers.
yeah, about how many people are
I think
sleep divorced.
the study said 1 out of every 3 couples is sleeping separately pretty regularly. I was kind of surprised by that. So I was interested in looking into what's going on with our sleep and why
Yeah.
is our solution being as separate as we can be,
Yeah.
you know? So there are a lot of factors. It seems so simple, like so many things, parts of being human that are just built into who we are, and it's a necessity, and yet it gets complicated.
Yeah.
Like,
And our solutions oftentimes are, let's medicate it.
right. Yeah.
At least in the West, of like there is a lot of people we know, a lot of friends we know that need Ambien or need Tylenol PM or
Melatonin
there's
or
advertisements, right? But need supplements to medication to sleep, and I'm glad that there are those things. The dilemma is it resets our brain in a way that then that becomes necessary rather than a sleep aid. It becomes a sleep necessity.
yeah.
And so, a really good sleep expert that I have had opportunity to hear from and train from is Michael Yapko, and talks a lot about how do we find the benefits that medication provide in our disciplines, in mindfulness and relaxation, and some of these practices that can give us that effect but don't lead to dependency.
Yeah. Or foods. Because that's one big thing if you look up how can you get better sleep. Some of the things are about what to avoid before bed, things to eat, things not to eat.
Yeah.
And
Well, let's go through because I hit all of them. So like you're supposed to decrease caffeine. Oops. I can drink a cup of coffee before bed. Decrease alcohol consumption a couple of hours before sleep. Physical activity. Nope. Sleep, sleep timing, light exposure. I think that's a lot of what the current kind of belief system is we're on our phones, we're on our iPads, we're on our Kindles, and it's queuing up. The light is queuing up. It's time to be awake, whether that's melatonin production or effects. And so those type of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's common hygiene right now in terms of how to sleep. But I think people aren't doing that.
It's so hard to change your total rhythms, right? Because that's like what you're used to. Even just, I love to have a cup of tea before bed.
Yeah.
But even just having liquids right before bed, you're going to be up to go to the bathroom in the night, And alcohol, a lot of people, it makes them sleepy. So they think this will be good to make me sleepy. But then there's a rebound effect that actually kind of disturbs your sleep later in the night. And
then you have to pee.
Right. And with caffeine, that can make your heart race. And, that doesn't help with sleep.
Yeah.
And
well, and just personally for me, diet of snoring is a problem and has been. I don't know if we've talked about that, but I can snore with the best of them. And yet when I reduce my intake of gluten or kind of grain from the Western hemisphere, it changes. The anti-inflammatory diet affects in a way that I sleep better.
yeah.
And so for me, it's not falling asleep, but it's not snoring, not keeping you up. I mean, it's also my diet is a relational gift.
It definitely is. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's one of the problems for people with sleeping is either they need noise, like need white noise or a fan, or I know a lot of people that really can't sleep unless they have certain kind of ambient noise.
Yeah, like an airplane engine in your bedroom.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the opposite, where you're disturbed by noise, either from your surroundings or from the person next to you, which I think is what leads to people sleeping in separate rooms.
Yeah, the sleep
Mostly
divorce.
because it's like, well, you're snoring and it's bothering my sleep and I need my sleep. So our solution is to be in separate places.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty common, is people disturbing each other
Yeah.
in sleep, and noise being a problem for getting undisturbed sleep. And if you're a parent, you're either waking up because you hear your children that wake up in the night because they're small, or you're waiting up for a teenager and hoping you hear them come home. Sleeping with
true.
one ear open, as we say, where you're
Yeah.
resting, but you're not fully there because you're worried about something.
Yeah.
And I think, that's not mentioned in a lot of the suggestions for how people can get more efficient and better sleep, is turning off your brain,
Yeah.
which I think is also really hard in our really busy society. Is like our brains are overactive. There's a high incidence of anxiety, people really overthinking and ruminating on things.
Well, that reminds me of the study done in the Norwegian Institute of Public Health.
Yeah, that was just right there.
That was right there. Well, because we were also talking about this, there's the light sensitivity piece. So they wanted to find out what affects sleep, and they talked to 45,000 people. So it's a pretty robust study. And they saw that screen usage increased insomnia by like 59%. But they weren't sure the causal part of it. Was it the actual light and the melatonin kind of producing of blue light, or was it what you were just talking about of the doom scrolling and
the blue light doesn't produce melatonin?
No, not
right?
the blue light, the other light that comes
Okay.
from it. But they were like, we're not sure. It's more about mental activity than it is light. It's what you're reading, probably with screen time being a part of it. But what are you looking at? Oftentimes you're looking at social media or just doing something that you think is mindless, but it's queuing up the fight or flight response. It's queuing up thoughts. Or I know you talk about sometimes, you have a notepad by the bedside and you're like, I just have to jot this down, because if I jot this down, I can release it and then fall asleep.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're thinking about it. And so
Yeah.
it's, how do you do more mindless? And I think the old myths are around that, like counting sheep. There's nothing special about counting sheep other than you're not thinking too deeply about things. And so how do you reduce the time of what are you going to read just something that's not, just a comic book or something light, or an actual physical book that can reduce the mental effort.
Yeah. Well, and that's something we always knew to do with our kids. And we'll probably go through the list for parents out there who are wondering what might be helpful, small things they could change. But it crept into our own lives and rhythms, like that reading the news before bed, or bringing our phones into bed that never used to be there before. Like that, it has a way of creeping in, and those boundaries changing, where we've both had to go stop. Like, so we used to always read a book in bed before we'd fall asleep. And then because phones became so prevalent, and then it would creep into, I remember one night you read me like a news headline.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's got like, I can't, that just made I could feel my heart rate go up. Like that was an awful story, news
stop.
story. I cannot, I can hear that at 6 o'clock in the morning. I cannot hear that right before bed. And so it's like, finding those boundaries that you absolutely, and I've tried to do that for myself, because I found I was starting to read books or do a puzzle on my phone or something right before bed, and realizing this is not helping I feel like I am taking longer to fall asleep when my brain is activated by that. And so it's putting the phone away, bringing out my good old fashioned paper book again. And also just, not, if your mind gets kind of churning on events of the day, I think we need to kind of remember how to do some progressive relaxation, bring back some of those tools to turn off that voice in your head. Because for me, if I wake up in the night, unexpectedly, that's when in the dark of night and everybody else is asleep, that's when your brain can really go in circles and start thinking thoughts you wouldn't have in the daytime, or everything feels harder, scarier.
Yeah.
And then I really have to practice a discipline of walking, kind of quieting that down. I either pray or I walk through a mental exercise in my brain. I have this kind of
Yeah. I like that story.
Well, I've never told you what the story is because
No.
I think if I bring it out in the light of day, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Don't tell
But
me
it's
the
similar
story.
to the idea of counting sheep. Only for me, it's a whole story in my head that starts, in a happy place for me on a beach somewhere, and there's this whole day that happens, and I walk through it noticing, the sound of the waves and noticing all the things. And I've never finished the story because it always puts me to sleep.
Yeah.
Because you just walk methodically through it and you notice the things. And so I always get to sleep very quickly. And by turning on those thoughts, it kind of overrides the other thoughts.
And for me, it's getting into my body. So like playing sports in high school, I dealt with some anxiety. And so just getting into mental relaxation and being able to relax mentally connected to my body. So like, I just have to take like 3 breaths now.
It doesn't take long for you.
No,
I think your head
just
hits
go,
the pillow.
I'm going to relax my muscles, and I take a couple of breaths and then I'm out. And I know that makes you angry sometimes.
It doesn't make me angry. It's just that, when you want to sleep and somebody else next to you is already snoring, especially if you're snoring.
Yeah, especially if I'm snoring.
Then it's like, oh man.
But if I'm not snoring, it's also like, how do you do that? And it's just like, it's been years of just relaxing. And I think you can cue up your body, just like it gets queued up for adrenaline. So like if you're woken up in the middle of the night with something that happens, right, like startling, it takes a long time because your body's cued to respond that way. You can actually get it cued to relax.
Yeah, well, it's a struggle for me because I'm on call all the time for births.
Yeah.
So my phone is always on. It's always by the bed. And if a text goes off, I wake up like you did for that fire alarm. I'm up like looking at that text right away. I can't ignore it. I'm already getting dressed to run to a birth possibly, so that I'm activated and ready to have a conversation with somebody. So if somebody texts me who's not somebody in labor, I instantly have to silence them.
Yeah. We jokingly call that the naughty list.
Yeah.
And we have family and friends that are on the naughty list.
Yeah.
Well, because it's again, a structure that it's not common to other people. I don't think many people have their phones by their bed.
I think a lot of people do now because we don't have
they might mute them.
landlines. Maybe. But, when you're a parent, I don't know how you ever turn your phone off because you always feel like if anybody needed you in the night, how would they reach you if your phone wasn't on?
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get to mute it.
I sleep right through it.
That is true.
We have that. Exploring, so those practices I think are interesting. I like doing things that are not medicinal as much as possible.
Yeah.
But there's one kind of product out there right now that scares me.
What is that?
It's where your spouse tapes your mouth shut.
Your spouse does it for
well,
you?
I just picture you taking a big piece of duct tape and putting it right across my
no.
right across my
especially
beard.
now when you got
But no, there's a thing called mouth taping.
I know that's kind of like
That's a practice.
I see it out there a lot. People talking about the benefits of taping your mouth shut. I could not tolerate that.
No, I mean, we joke about that. If we're fighting, we threaten to tape each other's mouth shut.
Not really.
Not really. But people are taping, and maybe you're doing that.
Explain that to me.
So it's about not having, sleep apnea is through mouth breathing. And so it's trying to reduce that of forcing the air through the nose. And so, I mean, back when we were kids and high school students, there was the tape on the nose, and it's kind of the same idea. That was trying to open up the nasal space for breathing to happen. And so the idea is you get more oxygen in and you won't breathe through your mouth. This is just like tape your mouth shut.
That makes me feel anxious just thinking about having tape over my mouth.
Right? Like,
night.
what if you're having
I guess you get used to it.
We have allergy season and pollen season, and if you get stuffed up, then
Yeah, what if there's a reason you need
I
you need
just,
another airway?
I would feel like we're drowning, and like there'd be, yeah, it would be more stressful, I think.
Yeah.
And then some people have mouth guards. That's kind of the same thing, but it's the idea that the air passage, your lower jaw needs to be forward, and it frees up the nasal air passage. And supposedly that helps with sleep apnea
And
and
snoring is supposed to
snoring.
help snoring.
So there's
Help stop snoring.
yes, and then there's all the so there's mouth guards, there's mouth tape, um, there's sleep divorce, and I don't know. I understand a lot of people are doing that, and I understand the benefits of that in terms of like if we're working different shifts. I mean, there's sometimes when you haven't slept in 36 hours that I'm going to sleep on the couch or somewhere else just to let you have like you can turn off the phone. I can be aware of everything so you can have sleep because
Yeah.
otherwise no good can come of that.
Yeah.
But that's different than this is the solution for our relationship is
Yeah.
we're going to be separate because I get that it meets one need, but I think it also affects, there's benefits of co-sleeping. Is that since we're talking about divorce sleeping, I guess co-sleeping,
Yeah.
but sleeping connected, there's physiological benefits from that in
Yeah.
terms of mutual regulation and oxytocin and attachment that helps regulation during the rest of the day. So there's this cost benefit. Again, it's a
Right.
goodness of fit for what the situation is for you. But we want to talk about there's benefits and detriments to each of these choices
Yeah.
sometimes.
And everybody has to weigh their own, what the downsides are and what the benefits are for each choice.
Yeah.
But for the sleep divorce thing, when I kind of looked into it, and I've heard this, that a lot of American homes now are being built with two primary bedrooms so that, a couple can each have their own space.
I thought two sinks were crazy, two bedrooms,
Yeah.
but
And
that's an affluent opportunity though.
that's partly what I was going to say about it too, is it's not possible for everybody to do that. It's kind of coming from a place of the ability to create space for everybody to have their own space. But even with homes where every child has their own space, there's benefits to giving them their own room, but there's also benefits to everybody having to live together and work
Yeah.
out the things that are hard. So, for us, that's never going to be an option.
No, we don't
It
have
was
two
never,
bedrooms.
yeah, it was never an option with our kids growing up that everybody had their own
No.
space. And it's not an option for us as a couple either. And I just think I get it for short terms. We've done that sometimes with one of us is really sick and coughing all night.
Yep.
But I think there's benefits to having to work out even the hard things
Yeah, to
together.
be together, and
Yeah.
you kind of have to.
Because don't think I haven't fantasized about us having our own room sometimes when snoring was really bad, but then
Yeah.
maybe getting to the root cause of it instead of just
Well,
choosing
yeah.
isolation as a solution.
Yeah, because it seems like it's treating the symptom and not getting to the heart of it. So if
Yeah.
you are having sleep apnea, you are snoring, there's physiological things going on, and there's going to be physiological consequences. So just sleeping separately means you're not disturbed by it, but I'm still having problems.
You're still snoring away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was also afraid, like if I ever had my own room, I would get so comfortable with it. I wouldn't ever want you to be in it,
Hey.
Well,
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, because
Yeah.
you get comfortable with like having your own space and doing things your own way. Like when we're forced to, when we're forced. This is really sounding bad, but when that's just the way you live and this is it. Like we
Yeah.
share a space, we have to share space in a closet. We have to
Yeah.
deal with each other's rhythms of sleeping and waking and making noise
Share
and
a sink.
share
Yeah.
a very small bathroom.
Yeah.
There's something about just human sort of connection and compromise that sort of just comes with the territory there.
Yeah, the difficulties there are kind of metaphors or analogies for difficulties in other parts. And so how are we handling sleep? Probably how we're handling conflict, how we're handling connection. We do like though the different kind of things, like when we're traveling, sometimes we get an upgrade to a king bed. It's like, so nice.
Yeah, that it feels like we're in separate bedrooms
Right?
because
Yeah.
there's so much space.
And we don't fight over the covers or the unique beds where you have your own comforter.
Yeah, that's more a European thing where
Yeah.
there's one bed but two separate comforters,
which is
which is
doesn't
kind of brilliant, actually.
yeah, because otherwise we do have a little tug of war.
They really don't. You usually want your feet way out anyway, so
That's
it's
true.
like,
But it's you can see how all of these things are behaviors, but they're behaviors connected to relational kind of dynamics. I think if I was living on my own, it would be different. I mean, the sleep, like finding ways to sleep would be the same, but figuring out how we navigate this in relationship would be very different.
yeah, that is true. So maybe we'll end with kind of what our bedtime routines were with our kids
Oh,
because,
okay. I thought you were saying our bedtime
well,
routine.
I mean, they're similar.
Yeah. We have a story time.
We read each other a story.
Yep. Let
It's
me
not a bad idea.
let me tell you about Bonhoeffer. No, that's how we got in trouble because I'm like, listen to this. And you're like, no, we can't have stimulating conversation. It needs to be,
Yeah, when it's the news. I don't want to hear the news right before I go to bed.
yeah. So our structure of what worked with us and with our kids.
Yeah, and I think we fell into this rather naturally. I don't think we had big discussions about what we were going to do for bedtime for our kids when they were newborns or infants. I think their rhythm was what it was. I tried to have a predictable nap time. Didn't always work.
Yeah.
But starting to build some sort of rhythm as far as when they would, when they became of a certain age, maybe 2 or so, they fell into an after lunch nap, this 1 to 3 sort of time. And most of our kids didn't really sleep during that nap, but this was for the good of all of us.
Good of the family.
We had
goodness
quiet
of
time.
fit.
Whether or
Yeah.
not they slept, that was up to them.
That's right.
But they would be quiet in their room with a book or some quiet toys or something. And sometimes
Contemplating.
they'd sleep, sometimes they wouldn't. But it was good for the parents and the children.
Yeah.
So that was always enforced before they were of school age. Just that downtime
Yeah.
for a couple hours.
It got complicated when they were sharing bedroom because
Yeah, it
then it
was a little
became
harder.
playtime and not downtime.
Yeah.
So there had to be some bit more enforcement of
Yeah, but they were pretty good at that.
They liked reading.
Because they were already in the habit of just sitting in there with a stack of books or something. And then bedtime, when we would get ready for bedtime, there was kind of a predictable routine that helped them know bedtime was coming and it was a good time. I never punished them by sending them to their room because, and my mom had told me that, like, you don't want them to think that, that is a place that they go when they're in trouble because then it's not going to feel like a nice place to go at
Right.
nighttime. So, we would lead up to it pretty soon after dinner. We would always do bath, whether or not they were really dirty. It just something about being in water just kind of calms down the nervous system and it's a fun place to play.
And it depends on the child. Some of our kids got stimulated by bath time.
Yes, but that was also good for them. I felt
It
like
let it out.
Yeah, and it just would always sit by the bath. And sometimes, when I was really tired, you would just sit and there'd be water everywhere in the bathroom. But you allowed
called
them
that
to
washing
free
the
play.
bathroom.
Yeah. And they had little books in there too and toys and stuff. And it was just
Cups.
part of the wind down routine.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite times of having kids that age was after the bath when they'd be all sweet smelling, getting their little pajamas, and we'd have story time.
Yeah.
So we'd read them a few books. And then by then they kind of would be winding down, and then we'd go in, brush their teeth with them, take them in bed, and we'd say prayers with them. And usually sleep came pretty quickly after that.
And the kisses, hugs and kisses. And we worked on that even when they got older so that was the early preschool, but as they got to be teenagers, we still did a routine. It wasn't the same. We didn't bathe them.
We did it for as long as we could until they would literally explicitly say, "Do we have to keep doing this?" I don't know any of my friends whose parents come in their room
Tuck
and kiss them
in,
goodnight.
yeah, and pray together. But it was like, okay, but then let's have a good night, like just a little conversation, because it's kind of putting a cap on the day. It's signaling both mentally and physically. Here's an ending.
Yeah.
And I was thinking we do that too. Like our actual rhythm, we come home from work. Like if it's a late birth and I can't sleep, I'll come down, join you for tea. We'll process a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
maybe watch some funny British television,
Mm-hmm.
and then we go to bed. And there's something about that. Like what's the ritual about ending, of
Mm-hmm.
signaling to your body, signaling to each other, here's the end.
Yeah. And we've both had to tell each other, remind ourselves to not let work creep in too late,
Yeah,
because we'll
especially
find
post
ourselves,
COVID,
yeah,
it became a problem.
because yeah, we did more work from home. And so we'd get in a rhythm of just staying on our computers and working, and we'd realize, oh, it's 10:30. We're both just sitting here silently working.
On our
And
screens.
we've got to give ourselves a shut it off time so that
Yeah,
we can, yeah, because we're looking at the screen, we're working kind of parallel, and
yeah,
we're not having that time to reconnect. So
mhm,
we've had to fight that ourselves and kind of give ourselves some limits of like,
yeah,
let's just say we don't work past whatever it is, nine
yeah.
o'clock or
Midnight.
yeah, hopefully not that late. But
Yeah,
yeah, for the kids too, and they like, I liked what you were saying about the just the touching base, even when they were beyond the age of wanting a hug and a kiss and a Bible story or whatever,
hmm,
we still would go in their room. And I found for teenagers or preteens, when they're starting to just go into what I call the cave years,
yeah.
and they're just not talking as much, it was a good time to connect because they really come awake.
Oh yeah, they're alive at night.
Yeah, when parents get tired, that's when the kids' brains turn on
Mhm.
and they have these deep questions, and you're so tired, but that's the best time to connect, especially if the lights are off, they don't have to make eye contact with you.
Yeah,
Just coming in and asking them a question, or with the boys, I would sometimes just ask what music they'd been listening to and could they share a song with me. It was a really great way to connect.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we did that with them, and two things: the physical touch. There's something soothing about human touch, and so having physical contact, hugs, kisses, baths, all of those type of things. There's a connection that helps soothe, and I think the touching is important. And how do you do that? How do you build that in? And we did, even when they were older, and it wasn't tucking them in, it was still having that physical contact as kind of a grounding,
Hmm.
kind of what the psychological literature talks about, grounding that has good neurological soothing. The other piece was we had to compromise our goodness of fit based on the developmental need of our kids. So
Hmm.
with the teenagers late at night, that's when we sacrificed some of our sleep, because
Yeah.
it would have been very easy of like, oh, we're just going to bed, and we missed out on that. And we made a conscious effort to, all right, we have to adjust our schedule.
Hmm.
And because otherwise you miss out on that time
Yeah. Well,
as
and
a
that's
function.
that's when their social lives become late. When the children were little, we used to connect after they'd go to bed rather
Hmm.
early. Then when their lives change and they're out late and we're the ones being kept up, and they would always say, "You don't need to wait up for me. Like I'm fine."
And I'd say
But
I'd
as a
want to
parent,
look in your eyes when you come in that door.
yeah,
I want to have a good eye contact, and
that's
then
right.
we'll go to bed.
That's right. And yeah, usually a parent's brain can't completely shut off if a teenager is still out. So
Yeah.
we would always want to connect, even if later we got more comfortable with getting a little sleep while they
Yeah.
were still out, but we would always ask that they come knock on our door and say they were home,
Yeah.
and we would connect a little bit before they went to bed.
Yeah. And having that was so central. And yet it was the shift then for us is we didn't have our time together. And so we shifted to morning walks and breakfast dates.
Hmm.
And some of our friends were like, you guys don't go out. And I'm like, well, we do, but it's breakfast or it's walking, because it fit our family
Yeah.
structure around sleep, around these type of connections.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I mean, it's fun. Now we can do it whenever, which is nice.
Well, more or less. Yeah, I think another thing that I didn't bring up that some people seem surprised when I tell new parents this is when children do get you up in the night or you wake up yourself, light is going to stimulate your brain. So I think people are so tied to their phones that if they can't sleep, their natural inclination is to get on their phone and doom scroll or, look at texts, or that's going to always activate your brain. And also just even the light, because we didn't have smartphones when our kids were babies.
No.
But if they woke up in the night as a baby and needed a diaper change, we did not turn on any lights.
I know. I put a diaper around the child's head one time because it was dark.
Yeah.
No, not really.
No, but maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Who would know?
Could, but we did keep it dark to kind of cue.
Yeah, it was a cue. Like, this isn't playtime. It kept them knowing that, like, the things that need to happen are going to happen, and then we're going back to bed. And it also just doesn't physically activate your brain and your,
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to just end with this. For those of you that are listening and going to sleep to this, I'd like you to just relax, close your eyes, and start to tell yourself a story. Where's your favorite space? And I hope you have some good Z's.